again for joining us this evening. Tonight's conversation and presentation will be focused around what we heard from you in our January 25th meeting, and then a discussion of some proposed solutions based on what we heard, based on those parking management guiding principles and community values, and our goals for managing parking in residential areas moving forward. So again, my name is Danny Hess. I'm the Neighborhoods Program Coordinator, and I'm joined this evening by Britt Fontenot, the Economic Development Director, Mike Veselik, our Parking Program Manager, Alyssa Piska, a consultant on this project and an engagement effort with us today, and then Rick Williams as well from Rick Williams Consulting. All right, so here we go. So again, just went through introductions. I'll go through the meeting background and purpose here next, and then Alyssa will take us through a summary of what we heard at those at that initial conversation on January 25th. Rick will talk about some proposed solutions based on your feedback and guiding principles and community values, and then we'll go into a breakout conversation. Small group discussion with based on a couple questions to prompt that discussion. Again, I'm just getting a little feedback, and so a reminder for folks who aren't muted to mouse your cursor over the bottom of your screen there and click that little microphone button, and when it's red, that shows that you're muted. So when you're not speaking, just go ahead and make sure that mute button is on. Okay, so last meeting, we sort of opened things up with a question prompting people to share with us what they loved about their neighborhood. And so I just wanted to bring that up again this evening. Got some great keywords here: convenience, walkability. We've got a friendly neighborhood here, a value of the people who live in this area. So thanks for participating in that word cloud generation exercise that we did last meeting. I think it really gets at what people love about living in this area. So again, providing some background about the why behind this engagement effort. Why are we conducting this engagement? So we work with this neighborhood and with the Parking Commission every year to look at the financial sustainability of the residential parking permit district. And we're finding that the program wasn't financially sustainable. And so before we go and find a solution internally to that issue, we wanted to hear feedback from you and provide a space where folks could really share out their concerns and their values around parking management in this residential area in a context that's different than the written public comment or the 3 minutes of public comment at the dais at the Parking Commission or the City Commission meeting. So we really are looking to generate some solutions that are supportable from the community and from a staff perspective and a decision maker perspective at the Parking Commission to make sure that we're addressing those financial sustainability issues, the usability issues for the permit management system going forward. So again, at that January 25th session, we presented those values and guiding principles to develop a shared understanding of the why behind parking management at the city. We heard your feedback in those breakout conversations on some discussion questions, and then we provided that feedback in a summary to you all through that parking engagement hub and neighborhood communications. All right, so the purpose tonight is to circle back with you all to sort of check that what we heard from you is reflected accurately in what we're talking about this evening. And then together we'll review those proposed solutions that were formulated by consultants based on your input from the community, based on input from staff, based on the values from the city strategic plan, the guiding principles and strategies in the downtown parking management plan, and all within sort of the capacity that we have at the city to manage parking and prioritize parking for different users in different contexts. So again, the goal tonight is to get feedback from you on those proposed solutions and ultimately share them with the parking. Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so we'll present what we heard, we'll provide those recommended solutions, again, have those small breakout conversations, and report out again at the end of the meeting to the entire group. After this meeting, we'll be going out and presenting a summary of what we heard and solutions to Parking Commission, to City Commission, and then staff will be implementing these proposed solutions at the direction of the Parking Commission. All right, so I'll toss it over to Alyssa at this point, and she will walk us through what we heard.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you again. Thanks for the active engagement. What I'm going to present is, as Danny had said, what we heard from you. So we want to make sure we were accurately hearing that. Plus, what we want to present is the perspective, as we said in the last meeting. A lot of the solutions we're going to present tonight are going to reflect your input, but we also need to be considering parking management best practices and input from staff, as Danny has covered. So let's go through the meeting feedback that we heard. So the first thing we heard pretty loud and clear, that the visitor pass process currently as it is challenging. So there was a lot of requests to simplify how those passes are accessed through the online system. So we took note of that, and we're going to be presenting to you on how we address the solution towards that issue. The next issue we heard from you all was a request for transparent fees. So from your perspective, from the community perspective, you would like permit fees to include citation revenue to potentially reduce the RPPD permit cost. That's what we heard from you, is that consideration. So we'll again address how we propose addressing that. The other thing we heard is a comment on consistent enforcement. So we heard from the group that it's not clear when enforcement patrols are in the neighborhood. So perhaps better communication, thinking about how we can address that consistent enforcement. Next, when we presented, so if you recall at the last meeting, what we did to frame this is we want to keep this parking management discussion, recognize that it's bigger than just simply a parking stall, as we talked about. It's really part of the overall system of the city's values towards building a community that you all want to live in and you're very proud of. And as Danny showed in that word cloud, we really understand what that is, and it's a great values for your community. So what we heard from you is the request to include safety in those values and guiding principles. That was not presented, but we heard from you that you wanted to see that recognized. And then the last community priority that we heard from you pertained to MSU. So specifically within the neighborhood, there's fraternities and sororities, recognizing that there's some different issues coming from those households, and so how can that be addressed? Heard you on that. Multiple users within a single residence, how can the MSU factor be addressed? Also, at the same time, game day can be an issue at times for your neighborhood. So we heard that loud and clear. So those are the core issues we heard from the community. What we want to present back to you is our perspective from the consultant and best practice perspective, excuse me. So we touched on this in terms of the values and the guiding principles. So the way that RPPD is structured currently is it only, as you all know, it only allows residents, home offices, and guests to park in the public right of way. So what this has created is a situation that's not an equitable use of the public asset. It's also not allowing efficient use of that supply. So it's really limited use of the public right of way. And then in addition to that notion of how the public good could be used, we wanted to just reintroduce the importance of a self-supporting system financially that's self-supporting. So that's important from a community and the city value as well. So that's just what we wanted to introduce. We agree with all of those community statements. We agree with all that. We just wanted to add this to the consideration as well. So based on that, those grounded findings, Rick's now going to give you solutions. How are we going to address those? So I'll transfer over to Rick.
Thanks, Alyssa, and hello to everyone again. And as Alyssa stated, it was really a pleasure to speak with all of you and hear from you at the last session. And I want you to know that everything that we heard, we took very seriously. And so what we've done, if you go to the next slide, what we've done is we've broken out some solutions that directly tie back to your concerns. We've put them in really two categories. One, what we believe can be accomplished in the immediate and short-term framework, which is 6 to 12 months from now. Then we also have some solutions that we're recommending that would take longer because of timing, the number of partners and stakeholders that need to be gathered to deal with sort of broader issues. So let's just start with that. As Alyssa said, one of the things we heard over and over, I think in almost all of the breakout sessions in the last go around, was issues with the visitor pass. And that's a staff issue over the next 6 to 12 months, is to work with you through a focus group of users to design an improved online visitor pass system. We have examples of other cities of where guest pass systems don't seem to be as onerous as of what you told us is the case. But we believe the best thing to do is sit in a room with some users, go through the online system as it is now, and say, what do we need to do to make this easy? It shouldn't be hard. And so that's a key priority, and we believe that can be addressed in 6 to 12 months. And as you can see in the italicized is who we believe is the lead entity to get this done. Fee structure and transparency. This was a big issue for you, and we understand it. We're recommending that, well, I'll step back. Right now, all of the enforcement labor related to your districts is charged to your fund. And we're recommending that that not continue. We're recommending that citation revenue cover its own costs, which would take that expense line item out of your district budgets, and that the revenue from your permit sales only would cover the administration and management of the RPPD. You would not be responsible for citation labor. That way, the allocated revenue, we hope that that would stabilize your budget. Only the cost of administration of the permit system itself, the guest system itself, would be expenses allocated to you. And within the transparency of that, the city would work on having a budget that outlines exactly what it is those costs are going into, what it takes the city to administer the program. And that would be at the lead of the Parking Commission. That'd be a recommendation. Staff would put that together, but the recommendation would come from the Parking Commission. We also believe that that could be accomplished within 6 to 12 months. Consistency and enforcement, that's a staff issue, and I know Mike's working on it, but we need to improve the communication that's occurring between the city and its enforcement staff and folks like you about when is enforcement is scheduled, what are the rules of engagement, who's responsible, what type of tickets are issued. And so we really believe the solution to the whole concern about enforcement, let alone how it related to the budget, which it now won't, is really a communications issue. We just need to be very clear and that everybody understands how enforcement works in the RPPDs. Next slide. And as Alyssa said, we heard very clearly from you in the early sessions about safety and why is safety not a core value or a guiding principle. And we agree. Again, as I've said before, we've worked with many cities, and in guiding principles, safety is a standard value that's in the guiding principles that then is the measure through which decisions are made. So we're recommending the following language. I'm going to read it for you. Recommend that the following language be added to the parking handbook and a new guiding principle created and implemented that says parking systems will be safe. The on and off street public parking systems and related programs will be managed to be safe, reliable, user-friendly, and attractive. They will complement the quality of the areas. Whoops, I got something just popped up in my screen. So I can't read the slide. I'm sorry, something just popped up in front of my slide. Anything, Danny?
Sorry, Rick. Yeah, tried to
I
move it out of the
apologize.
way. Just is lagging a little bit.
Okay, I apologize. Hopefully that'll go away. But as we're going, I hope when this pops back up, I won't finish it because we need to go on. But we wanted, take the time when you get a copy of this presentation to look at the statement on safety that will be added to as a guiding principle in the parking handbook. Because we heard you loud and clear, and parking has safety issues, everything from enforcement to lighting to secure connections of pedestrian ways, quality infrastructure, and safety is a part of your communication systems as well. And so again, we heard you, and we want to make sure that that is added as an update to guiding principles in the parking handbook going forward. And again, that can be accomplished in the next 6 to 12 months. Staff can make that happen. Next slide. Hopefully we won't have something in front of it. Are you guys seeing the same thing in front of the slide? Okay.
Rick,
Yeah.
can you tell me what you're seeing?
It says Ironport spam quarantine notification.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. One moment.
Okay.
Yes, we're all.
Sorry about that, folks. So is now this presentation's gone.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. It's been a night of technical surprises.
Thanks, you guys. Just bear with us one moment here.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we can just go back to the safety slide, I'll conclude that and then we'll go on to other short-term and immediate strategies, solutions. There we go. So again, it's just a recognition that we need the language that is going to influence decision-making in the future. And what we tried to do in that last sentence is include all the issues of parking related to safety, that it's not just parking a car on the street and traffic, but it's secure linkages between destinations, quality infrastructure, and effective coordination of lighting and enforcement. So next slide. So given what we've talked about to this point, and it goes back to Alyssa's point about the things about the current format of these two RPPDs that don't necessarily complement the overall strategic plan or the overall city's goals for managing parking in the public right-of-way. So we're recommending that these two districts remain where they are, but they do not expand. Or would any additional RPPDs be created under this format? Because of the conflicting values and principles that this type of district has with other city goals, particularly unlocking the parking supply, the equitable use of the public right-of-way, and not having exclusive uses. This will not affect you, but it means that these two districts are as they are with the changes that I've already proposed as solutions. That means that new residential districts that might be proposed in the future would be based on the tenants and the criteria necessary for the establishment of parking benefit zones for residential areas that was adopted by the City Commission in Ordinance 2033. So that's how we feel we've tried to balance the solutions and address the issues that were raised by you and the community about these specific RPPDs. And then moving forward in the future with residential areas that are outside of these RPPDs, that we not replicate this. And as a result, again, the PBZ model would be used for neighborhoods that would request parking management districts in the future in their residential neighborhoods. Next slide. So the immediate and short-term strategies we believe can be accomplished within the next 12 months. Moving forward, there's larger issues that get at some of the bigger issues you have around residential units that have multiple permits and specific user types and how to manage supply. And so moving into the midterm, the 12 to 24 month period, these three areas of recommended solutions would need to come at your behest and with additional funding. And some of that additional funding could be within the normal administrative cost of managing these districts. The first, and we heard very clearly, is we need to collaborate better with MSU and the high school. And because they actually have supplies of their own, particularly MSU, but we don't know how that supply works, and so we can't speculate on whether there's opportunity within that supply to partner with the district on solving issues like a normal residential unit that it's a sorority or fraternity or major apartment buildings that have lots of students that put lots of vehicles on the street. And so that's a longer term project that's involved in engagement between the city, representatives of the neighborhoods, and these two entities to see if there's a way to share and collaborate with parking and get to realistic solutions on how to manage constraints. Something we heard that everybody liked is let's make decisions with data. And we don't have a lot of data about these districts, particularly data on what might be opportunities in the district in places like MSU. And so moving forward, there need to be a data collection effort to make sure that we're making good decisions about supply that we can depend on and supply that we might be able to access, and then have good conversations between the owners of those supplies to share within the district. And finally, all the solutions should be developed on data. We heard that very clearly. And so anything that is data is gathered needs to be transparent. It needs to involve review by multiple stakeholders. And then we can get to some desired outcomes. Some of the outcomes that were offered in the work sessions, permits that are allowed per unit, or charging higher fees for permits beyond a certain cap number. So I'll make it up, but every unit has two parking permits that they can buy at the normal rate, but anything over two goes at an escalated rate. What we can do with supply on game days, what's available and what's not available. But we don't think that any of these solutions, we think they're good ideas, and we've seen them in place in many other cities, particularly capping of the number of permits per unit or varied rates for the more permits that are purchased. But we don't believe that that decision can be made unless we know anything about the data. Where are these permits parking? What are the available opportunities we have, and have realistic data to say that we can actually implement a solution and have an effect on the supply. And so those would be the midterm solution strategies. Next slide. So now I'll turn it back to Danny.
All right, thanks, Rick. So like the last session, this is the part of our time together this evening where we're going to set up the breakout rooms and have some smaller group discussions on the what we heard summary and the proposed solutions. So again, we'll have facilitator staff and consultant facilitators will moderate discussion, keep an eye on the time, and then they'll report back with a brief summary of the discussion that happens in these breakout rooms. Again, we're asking that a member of the group take notes and type those notes up. You can type them directly in an email to me. My email is there on the screen, and we can also drop it in the chat box, or you can type notes up in a Word document and attach that again in an email. And thank you all for respectful and productive conversation and making sure that everyone who wants to participate in these small group discussions has the opportunity to do so. So Mike is working in the background here, setting up these breakout rooms. And while he's doing that, I just want to share these questions with you that will sort of spark conversation in the breakout rooms. First off, did we hear you correctly? So again, circling back with you, making sure that we represented your concerns expressed in that first meeting accurately. And then looking at the solutions proposed by Rick, did we address those concerns with the solutions presented? So these two questions are what we'll be focusing our conversation on. And again, these notes will be shared with Parking Commission at the upcoming meeting. So we'll just give Mike a couple seconds here to pull up those breakout rooms and go ahead and join. Hey, folks. All right, holler if you can hear me.
I can hear you, but I'm on a phone. I can't see anything.
Okay, but I can hear
Yeah,
you loud and clear, so that's great.
I can hear you. I'm Eileen.
Hi, Eileen. And it looks like we have a third person on the phone. If you're able to unmute yourself, that would be great. And Beth is also in the room with us here.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, you guys, so going back to those discussion questions, did we accurately reflect what you all came to us with in that initial meeting? Well, I guess first off, sorry, before we get too deep into it, is there a member of the group who'd be willing to take some notes so that we can capture what we're hearing in this conversation?
Hi guys, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for logging in late. I missed the opening part of the presentation, so I'm just planning to try and listen and catch up a little bit.
Awesome, thanks, Beth. Yeah, my apologies if you had trouble joining. There was, yeah,
No,
mistake.
it's my own fault for getting my schedule off kilter. So I just got off of work, so sorry
Nope.
about that.
Thanks for joining us.
I guess I could try and take notes if nobody else wants to do it.
That would be wonderful. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, so did we hear you correctly? First off, did everyone attend that first meeting on the 25th? Yep.
My husband
I
did.
may have been trying. I've attended other meetings on this matter.
Great. Awesome.
I did not.
Okay. So yeah, that first conversation focused on sort of what was working in the RPPD, what wasn't working, and then how we can improve.
The recap that talked about the difficulty, the increasing difficulty of the visitor pass. It's not lost on me. It used to go smoothly, then it got more complicated. I think a lot of people bailed on purchasing visitor passes. The revenue dropped. Here we are. Sounds like you heard that there is that there's going to be an effort made to come up with a visitor pass system that is more simple. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that was something that we heard in that first meeting that we wanted to address in the proposed solutions this evening.
So great. I think that the number of visitor passes will increase when it is not, it's not 25 clicks to sign up a visitor. And so I don't know whether that's an app. And again, I think that makes it more difficult for some people to think about having to add another app to their life. But something that makes it like less than 10 clicks to sign up my visitor. Or otherwise, I think a lot of people are going to exit the system, not purchase visitor passes. Any thoughts?
Well, I agree with you. We stopped buying them just because we bought them the first year with the online system. And what we found was by the time the visitor had visited and left, we were still trying to figure out how to get into the system to make it work. Whereas when we had one hang tag, we could just keep on our porch and they could hang it, that we'd be done with it. It took 2 seconds. And we don't have a lot of regular visitors, like a cleaner or something like that, which I think they had a misconception of how visitor passes were being used, for regular appointments or something like that. And maybe some people use it that way. You could sit down and put in all the license plates at one time and be done with it, but it's really not how it's turned out to work for most of us, I think. And we would be happy to buy a pass again for occasional visitors, but not under the, it's just way too cumbersome. It wasn't worth it.
Cumbersome is the operative word.
Beth, are you finding, since you did not buy a visitor permit, are you finding that when visitors do come, they're having trouble finding a place to park?
No, we are a couple blocks away from we're on 3rd. So and we don't have a ton of renters right now. So we park our cars on the street and we have one spot, a driveway. So all I do is if I know the piano tuner's coming or something like that, or somebody's going to drop by, I pull our car out and put it on the street. So by doing that, we add one more car of our own, but we have bought 2 passes for the street. So, we can put either of our cars on there. We decided to pay for that expense, even though we don't really need more than one because we have a driveway. So,
Right.
but we are like 1 block away from where the real parking crunch is. And, if we changed the system, I'm sure we'd have a problem with it.
This is Jeff.
Yeah, hi, this is it. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I want to just join in, and the biggest issue that I think the neighbors are asking the city to deal with is the ease of the visitor parking pass. It's very problematic in the switching around. We have chosen to, just like Beth did, when we have someone coming, we'll clear a driveway and move 2, 3, 4 cars around just to have the visitor not wind up with the ticket, because sometimes you're pretty efficient, City of Bozeman, when you enforce the ordinance. And I think Missoula, I've been led to believe that Missoula, who we did model our parking district after, has some sort of an easier visitor pass that they lay on the dash. But those were the comments I wanted to make. Were we going to talk about the finances, the fines and stuff at some point as well?
Yeah, I think, yeah, we should, because I think that's another piece of it. I'm still, as much as I thought the presentations at the front end were very kind of clear and straightforward, it seemed like, and maybe I missed something, but it seems like we're still circumventing what was originally understood when the parking districts were started, which was that the budget would come out of our purchase of passes plus the fines. And I still feel like, even though there's a discussion now to separate out the whole enforcement division from the budget and everything like that, I don't know. I'm just not sure why the rules changed.
Well, there was a misrepresentation when we adopted the ordinance and it was written up, but it's clearly that some of the fines were to be used for administration. And the co-host, whose name I don't know, so I'll just refer to you as co-host. Some sharing of that co-host would be appropriate. I don't think I would be supportive of all the fines being used for, administration, but some portion, 50-50, whatever. Because
the people that we weren't there. I don't know if you were there when this was all being decided on the front end, but when the people were at the table then, they said that the fines were going to go towards administering the system. So you can change the rules, whatever, 15 years later, I guess. But that's not how I understood it.
Actually, Mike, I kind of was there at the beginning, both on the parking commission and as a neighborhood president. And you're right. We clearly said that the parking district should have access to the fines to solve their, to take care of the enforcement and everything else. And I guess, to some degree, city, if you do one thing to recreate some trust, a little bit of trust, would be to deal with this and maybe correct that mistake some staff made 10, 15 years ago when they drafted the
and
ordinance.
It's not to be, I appreciate that. And I really respect your answer and being there on the front end. I guess it's just the way it boils out at the back end is that the cost for those of us who buy 3 or 4 parking passes plus a visitor pass, this has gotten to be a pretty decent little additional bill in our lives. And I think it needn't be quite such a significant bill in our lives if we were applying the budget as was originally agreed to.
Just a clarification. I'm sorry, the gentleman who's speaking just before you, Mike, I'm not getting a name to go with that. Would you mind sharing your name or?
Yeah, he's my husband. It's Jethro.
Jethro. Okay. And are you?
No, not Jethro. Jeff.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jeff. Okay. I'm sorry. The dog is making noise in the background.
I like Jethro. I like Jethro. I envisioned like a rope belt.
I would answer Jethro as well.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Sorry. So in the presentation, was there an attempt to address this issue of using the fines or not using the fines, or just saying we're going to think about it?
Yeah, so the proposed solutions was to separate out those 2 streams. So to have, the proposed solution was to have the permit fee revenue from permit sales cover management and administration of the program. So that is, everything from finance, doing the processing of payment and the issuing of permits, and then to separate the other cost stream to have citation revenue cover the cost of enforcement in the district.
And is there a feeling that that current revenue from those streams would cover the current costs?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That seems like that's something we could all live with. If I assume that's without changing the fee, the permit fees.
That's correct.
Significantly. So that wouldn't necessarily address what Mike was saying about multiple permits being unaffordable. Okay. But at least it'd be a step in the right direction.
It's not that they're unaffordable. It's they have gone up significantly. So no, we can still afford them. We own houses on the south side of Bozeman, Montana. We're not destitute people.
But some of the students who rent houses here are on the edge. And I have students at the university that it would be a thing for. So I think we should try to be sensitive to keeping that under control if we can.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Eric on the phone. Combined with the idea of transparency, that seems pretty reasonable to me. Sorry, I'm on South 6th. That seems pretty reasonable to me. If there's a transparent system that says, here's the cost of administering the system, and the residents are paying for that administration through the license fees. If the cost of administering is less than the license fees, then the prices would drop. If it goes up, they go up, because we're all benefiting from the parking district. I'll just sneak this point in here, which is I think it'd be worth always framing these conversations around what's the original problem that the parking district was solving, and making sure that that is still a primary focus, that we don't go back from what the original problem was with any future changes.
Can I ask the co-host a question? When you say enforcement, what do you mean by that? When we started, the police were heavy enforcement. Does the parking commission do their own enforcement now with their own staff? Or is it
Yeah.
still?
So
Okay,
enforcement is done by the Parking Services Division. We have parking enforcement officers. There
So
are
it-
4 of
it-
those individuals who are full-time staff. So the police department is no longer handling parking
so
enforcement.
it's the full, parking commission has control of the full budget of fines and administration.
Correct.
Anecdotally, that visitor pass thing is, the kids are so afraid to park in the street on, I live at the end of South Grand where it turns into Third. And that the biggest frustration I have is they're so afraid of the ticket of $60 they park on their lawns. So the enforcement's working fine, but
Yeah, that is a problem. And it's not just there's a new homeowner on Third who's now doing that too.
the impact on what I call a sense of neighborhood and community was of knowing people, et cetera, is suffering. You know, you can't really fault the college kids at $60 is a hefty price. But I just wanted to get that on the record. Which I still think is illegal to park in your front lawn.
I think it's a good point. And yeah, so not only have the cost of this, what were once stickers and now our plates, in a scan or a digital scope, but yeah, the ticket went from, I think $20 was what the tickets were just not too many years ago, and then they went from 20 to 60. So no, it's a very different deal.
That part of the coordination with the university, they did well.
Yeah, I think
Right.
part of the reason the prices went up was the university tickets are $60. So if the city tickets are less, then they'd be more willing to take the chance on the city ticket than the university ticket.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah. So we kind of have to have it coordinate with what the university tickets are costing, I
Right.
think, for it to be enforceable.
But when we've had when you have, as a resident, when you have a visitor show up, and they're here for 10 minutes and you don't get them in the system and they get a $60 ticket.
I know, that's
it's
really harsh.
It's a day wrecker instead of a small bummer.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I ask the co-host, did you find that much similarity between those of us up by the university, those of our residents that live by the high school, and those that, in terms of what the real problems are? Because I kind of recall different issues. Like the high school was events and parking and driveways, and ours was the overflow of the students coming to class, circling, and not wanting to pay the $20, $60, whatever, at the university.
Right. Yeah, I think the pressure on the district from high school overflow is much less than the pressure on the MSU district from campus overflow. So they're not seeing as many issues as you all were with, folks circulating around the neighborhood. And we even got some comments back from folks in that neighborhood that say there's tons of parking on our street, like this block face does not need to be included in the district anymore. Would it be worth it to reduce the size of the district? So I think especially in seeing, the high school out on the west side, taking some of the pressure and enrollment off of the original high school, there's changes happening in that district that are not as reflective as the concerns we were hearing from the MSU RPPD residents.
What you say is true. There are streets in our area that have a lot of capacity on them. We only added our part to the district to deal with the overflow from the existing district already. As you know, it started very small down by the quads and kind of grew from that. They actually closed a street as well to prevent some turning areas, but I'll be quiet.
No, that's great feedback. So you guys are in the RPPD, or sorry, the MSU one.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
As are we.
So I'm sorry, again, I'm playing catch up. Was there a proposal to change the availability or to change significantly who's allowed to get permits or any of that, or have we not gone to that stage yet?
No, yeah, permit availability is not changing. There was some discussion. Permit availability is not changing. The boundaries of the districts are not changing. They're, yeah, they're not unlocking supply or adding commuter permit availability anywhere. But we did say that we're unwilling to expand the boundaries of either of the RPP districts. And so we're just going to leave the boundaries as they are now. And any additional requests for managing residential parking in other neighborhoods in the city will do so under the parking benefit zone model rather than the residential parking permit district model.
So when you guys were talking about that, it sounded like, you know, talking about public right of way and those things makes sense in general, but at least the MSU parking district has a very specific problem that's not going to happen in the rest of Bozeman in the same way. And it kind of doesn't make sense to me to talk about, you know, parking adjacent to the university as a public right of way. I didn't live here when the district was created, but I understand the problem from seeing what happens at Cooper Park and Southside Park. You know, the MSU has a supply and demand problem, and it overflows into the residential neighborhood, and that seems unique.
Yeah, I think
that was, I think, the genesis, to some degree, the genesis of this program. And while initially I remember being, you know, reluctant to pay to park in front of my house, one of the earlier commenters said, I mean, it has really created a more kind of a peaceful situation in our university neighborhoods that more often than not, I can find a place to park in front of my house. That's nice. And I've totally been conditioned into paying for it. It's really just become a matter of like, how much do you pay to park in front of the house that you pay property taxes on and everything else on? And when you have a visitor, is that a low-key, easy, simple transaction, or is that a complicated transaction?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, as a newcomer, I definitely appreciate the city, you know, providing this as a service in this neighborhood, and I'm willing to pay for it. But our family, you know, my wife especially, when it switched from physical hang tags to the digital system, we much prefer the simplicity of the hang tag because nobody knows, you know, it's just much more simple, much more straightforward.
You know, one of the side benefits I never thought about till you mentioned the students parking on their lawns to avoid tickets. I would assume that's visiting people that can't get permits at the house. And if we could solve this issue of the visitor permits, then they could have, you know, 2 house visitor permits that could go on, and then people could park on the street instead of on their lawns. Which would definitely be ideal. You know, so maybe this visitor thing isn't just for, it could help solve some of these other issues too for the renters and make more parking available for them. Now, I don't know that we can't create spaces in the streets right, you know, the 2 streets right next to the university. That's where there's still really hard time getting, even if you have a permit, there's enough renters and sorority and fraternity parkers. It's hard to get a space there. You know, if you leave your space, it gets taken and then you can't park next to your house. And I know that I know some residents who that's a problem for. So I'm not sure that we can solve that problem, but we certainly shouldn't do anything to make that worse for them.
I just think it's the issue that started a lot of that from the neighborhood anyway, the difficulty of the visitor passes and the frustration we have. And it probably has some effect on the lawn parking, but mostly it's just the affordable housing discussion. And most of the homes in our neighborhood, when they're sold, they're old ranch homes, 5 or 6 bedrooms. That's 5 or 6 students, and each student has a car. And
Yeah.
you do the math, and someone winds up on the front lawn.
It's in violation.
And it's frustrating to have to call Mr. Phillips all the time and try to get something done, and to avoid a look of, to me, it's just detracting of a neighborhood character. What did they say? Follow the money, follow the visitor permits. See if Missoula has a simple system. Don't make our neighborhood happy.
One question I had was, has anybody had any brainstorms about working with the university to, come up with a system that rewards students for not commuting by car? Maybe I've always thought that Missoula has some incentives for this. Many businesses have rewards to employees for commuting, and I would love to see something like that to help us with this. Is there a way to convince MSU that, maybe you log a certain number of days where you're commuting, you're carpooling or taking the bus or riding your bike, and you get rewarded with a couple of free day passes that you can use for those emergencies? They have done, their new system has made parking on campus. My sense is, I don't park on campus, but my sense is it's a lot easier for people to find spaces now. So the problem that existed a year ago, where you'd buy a pass on campus, but you could never find an open space, they really do seem to have made that better. So I'm wondering if we could continue to refine our relationship with them by, devising some kind of reward system for continuing to commute responsibly and not need extra parking.
Yeah, Beth, that's a great thought. The university, in partnership with the city, actually, and Western Transportation Institute, did begin hosting a platform to incentivize and do commuter challenges to encourage people to choose alternative modes. And so that program is sort of in a fledgling state right now and is growing and gaining more support from the university, which is great.
The reason that there's better parking on campus is because they're selling less parking permits. They limited the number they sell. So that just is throwing more people out in the residential.
Well, they also opened up some further flung parking lots that then they have a shuttle bus that they're experimenting with going back and forth from. And those lots are a lot cheaper to buy permits for. So I don't know, but you're right. The close in lots, they did stop selling so many permits for.
I like your idea, Beth. Back in the dark ages, universities like MSU would say that freshmen need to come to school the first year without a car. That would make a big difference, but sure you can't get that genie back in the bottle.
That was my freshman year.
Mine too.
Yeah, and other universities do still do that, especially to manage, constrained parking supply on campuses. You guys, I think we have just 2 minutes left, and I want to make sure that I am summarizing the thoughts accurately here. So, Beth, maybe you could help me out a little bit too on capturing some of the themes. What I'm hearing is agreement with the visitor permit usability, the importance of finding a more usable system there. Hang tags are preferred, but increasing the usability of that is very important.
Check Missoula, see if they have it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Missoula uses hang tags, and we're looking to continue to leverage the digital system that we have, just trying to reduce those clicks and make it more user-friendly to increase sales there.
Does Missoula,
Okay.
I guess that kind of assumption, though, that like if everybody's saying that the digital system is worse than hang tags, and we're just saying make the digital system a little better, why not just keep the simple physical thing?
Yeah, I think there's increased cost and increased time for using the hang tag approach that we were able to save some admin and management costs with the digital system, as well as parking enforcement officer time. And so there would be, you know, a price attached to going back to that hang tag model, which we were not willing to explore at this time.
So I can understand and appreciate that, but it's just pushing the bubble of price and hassle to the residents. Like I don't, it doesn't bother me if a parking enforcement officer has to get out of their car when they drive around. Like that's not, you know, like it makes the usability worse for all of us.
Right,
So
it
that's the
just
other side of
might
that
mean that
argument.
they don't cover the entire district within their shift, or they're not able to enforce, you know, the far reaches of their area. Yeah, so it's always a balance.
I understand your perspective, but I guess to me, saying we're not willing to pursue a non-digital option is writing off the residents' concern.
Well, it looks like we're getting
It's
back.
making it less usable for us and more usable for parking enforcement.
Okay, it looks like we're bounced back into the main room here. Okay, everyone. So now we're going to do a bit of a share out, just summarizing the themes, what we heard in these breakout conversations based on those guiding questions. So Beth, I might kick us off here and have you fill in some details where I might have missed something. But we were just wrapping up a conversation on visitor permit usability. We heard that, yes, those concerns were accurately reflected in our summary of what we heard, but there's still some pressure or some desire out there to go back to the hang tag model rather than the digital system. And yeah, that option, folks would like to see that option maintained. Again, managing group living situations, including sororities and fraternities and folks who live in, you know, renter households with multiple car owners, finding a way to make that option available so that folks can park with or can buy permits, but not in a way that constrains parking for adjacent neighborhoods. So finding a balance there. Let's see, a third theme, Beth, anything popping up from your notes there?
Let's see. I just wanted to reiterate, I think it's what you just said, but to be really clear that people living closest to campus have the hardest time finding parking now, even when they buy permits, and that anything we should do shouldn't make that worse. There was a comment about that I thought was really perceptive. I forget who said it. We should focus in making sure that we don't continue meeting the original goals of the parking district, that we don't break what originally was designed to, you know, to fix the problem, and make sure that changes don't change the successful things about the parking program now, which has led to a calmer neighborhood, a stronger feeling of neighborhood, cohesiveness, and higher quality of residential living.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. Mike?
Yeah, definitely. I'll go ahead and read from what my group had mentioned. Yeah, you know, we were going over our kind of points as we got kicked back in. So if there's anything I missed, feel free to chime in. The first one being around the fee transparency, just having total clarity around number of enforcement officers, around how much it costs, around how those costs tie into to the costs that residents are paying for the permits, as well as if there's excess enforcement revenue, where is that revenue going? Just having a really clear layout so that everybody can easily understand where money is being spent and what they're being charged for. There was some, you know, if there were to be any move towards unlocking supply in the neighborhoods or anything like that, setting a baseline for residential use and residential occupancy may be a little lower than commercial occupancy standards, or, you know, maybe downtown's occupancy levels would be different than other residential neighborhoods. There was a push to encourage bicycling and keep that going. And a possibility to do that. There were some new ideas that were coming up. A possibility to do that. They thought that hadn't been reported back from the original conversation. A possibility to do that would be moving the 72-hour rule to a 5-day rule, so that way somebody could commute all week on their bike and then just move their car on the weekends. Collaborating with MSU, this came up in regards to the sorority houses. We had a woman from one of the sorority homes who raised some issues, and we think we might already have a few possible solutions or possible things to solve and work on. And then the final one is giving residents the ability to, in the past, they could easily see with a permit who had a permit in the neighborhood, who didn't, et cetera, but possibly providing residents a way to see would a car on their street have a permit or not, a way to look that up, so that they could then give us a call if there was an issue. That's what I had. I think I captured everybody's comments.
Thanks, Mike. Alyssa?
Okay, my group was Carolyn, Tim, Greg, Lois, and Barton. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the concern of if the RPPD was to be essentially discontinued, that system of management, first extend it east to Tracy and then draw the line. So that was kind of where our group ended up on that discussion. Is there's still streets that are being impacted. So before that's done, think about extending it just a little bit further east. There was discussion needing for more parking enforcement accountability. Currently, they don't run past 3 and on the weekends. So we discussed that would be different, not that wouldn't be impacted by this change in the fee system, that the fee pulling out the citation revenues and labor costs doesn't affect the current service. Regarding that issue of pulling out the citation revenue and labor as a separate, not tied to the fees, some of the group was not in favor of that, still thinking that the citation revenue should be considered. And then the last comment was there has been work done regarding the visitor system, and they'd like to just make sure that that's noted and staff is aware that there has been input from neighbors previously on that. So those were our core issues. Did anyone in my group want to chime in? Anything else I missed? Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks, Alyssa. Let's see, Rick.
Hi. We have a good group. We have a great note taker. So I'm just going to summarize real quickly, and then I would ask anyone in our group to jump in, because I'm going to be real brief. I think the good news from our group was there was fairly high agreement with, or support and trust for, the solutions that are being offered. We spent a lot of time on the visitor pass, which is, I think, as Pat on our committee said, it's probably easily maybe the #1 issue that was brought up in the original work groups. And I think the idea of being open to a much simpler system, that going forward with the focus group, sitting down with the city, looking at other city programs in other cities, and just make it as simple as possible. And an online system maybe where you would approach the discussion, but a lot of support for something much simpler, like a paper hang tag or something you could just print online. But I think there's a sense that we can make this easier. The issue of the budget and transparency, we had a good discussion about it, talked about what other cities do, best practices, that separating the expenses of enforcement from this budget is important, and run enforcement as its own cost center. But also, like other groups that was just mentioned, is that there really needs to be a very high sense of transparency on what the line items are for expenses that are going into the budget, and then against which permit fees would be calculated. And we didn't get far enough into it or time to, but, and what if we hit a surplus? If we do that, where does that money go? But I think there's support for running each district as its own cost center. And so I think that was good. And we'll have other people chime in. In terms of the RPPD not expanding, we didn't talk a lot about it. We put it on the table. In the discussion, there wasn't any opposition expressed in the meeting of just allowing these districts to be more transparent, fix the visitor pass system, make sure that the rates are stabilized and true to the budget itself. The issue of safety, we started with that actually. I think there's support for that, but Kathy brought up a good point is maybe we need some more discussion about how what we're doing in these districts matches up with the city's sustainability and climate goals. And then unfortunately we ran out of time and we had Chancey from MSU with us, but he was nodding his head through the meeting and I think everybody was nodding their heads as well, that MSU is a resource and a partner, but we don't have the data. And so, you know, a logical next step in those midterm strategies would be to get together, learn more about what we can do together, what supplies we can share, and see how that can be used to address some of the solutions. So with that, I would open it up to anybody in my group to add anything that I might have missed. Great group, and thank you for the discussion.
Thanks, Rick. All right, Britt.
All right. Hey, Danny. Yeah, I had a great group as well. I'd like to thank all of them for participating and to Deputy Mayor Cunningham for taking notes of our discussion. I really appreciate that. And you'll hear some themes, some common themes threaded through this description. And then I invite everyone in my group to please, if I miss something or mischaracterize, please add or clarify. So we started off with visitor passes as well. And as you might imagine, there was some good discussion about how clunky the system is. I think I might have used that word, how clunky the system is, and some discussion about why the original hang tag system was abandoned. I tried to describe a little bit, just briefly, about how our enforcement system works with the license plate readers and how the hang tags aren't compatible with that. But I look forward to the focus group so that we can come up with some other ideas. We also discussed, there were some comments, at least a couple of good comments about how seniors will react to a new visitor permit system, and it needs to be really easy. It needs to be really intuitive, and we need to be able to do our best to accommodate seniors who might not be who might not even have access to or might not have skills on a computer. That was another good comment. There was another comment about just general I guess appreciation for having the RPPD. I was happy to hear that. There were, just generally speaking, I think there are some folks in our group who appreciated the fact that it was there and that the enforcement was making a difference and was improving their quality of life. And so I know there are improvements to be made, but there are some folks who do see the value in having it functional. Let's see. The next thing I asked about. I just asked a general question about actively reflecting the input of the conclusions, accurately reflecting the input. And one of the issues that wasn't captured in our discussion was that of neighborhood character. And so, just recognizing that neighborhood character is important and it should be a part of the broader conversation. Let's see. We did spend a bit of time talking about the revenue question. And we talked a little bit about how much of a concern this was. There's some relief in our group about the fact that it's being addressed, and there's a desire to sort of look at whatever comes out of that discussion. The desire to kind of look at it before any significant changes are made. So I appreciated that, and also the building of trust. We're really trying. Not just we, the staff people, but we, the whole group, the residents, all of us, Rick and Alyssa, we're all really trying hard to rebuild our trust amongst each other. And so that's what this engagement effort is all about. That's what the focus groups are intended to provide, and just better communication and just really try to rebuild that trust. There was a brief conversation about consistency of enforcement. There wasn't a lot of it didn't seem as though that was a really hot topic for the folks in my group. Some people didn't think that was a big issue for them at all. Safety, of course, is, and most agreed, if not everyone agreed, that safety should be a value. And then that's where we ran out of time. So I'll just take a minute to invite anyone in my group to clarify or add. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Britt. Okay, everyone. Thanks for sharing out and participating in those conversations. It's really important to have that space be a part of this engagement process. So I just wanted to go over some next steps here before we close out for the evening. So we're all clear on where this input and where this feedback is headed after this evening. So March, these solutions and what we heard this evening will be presented to Parking Commission at their next meeting, just next week. And then in April, we'll be doing an update on this engagement process, what we heard from the community and next steps as far as implementing some of these solutions. We'll be giving that update to City Commission in early April. And then a work session with the Parking Commission will allow us an opportunity and allow Parking Commission the opportunity to integrate these proposed solutions into their work plan for the coming year. So that's where your input will be shared out among those decision-making groups, and then they will choose to direct staff to implement some of these solutions along with your input. So again, ongoing staff will be implementing as directed by Parking Commission.
Danny, this
Yes,
is Kathy
ma'am.
Powell. As this, the next steps where you take all this information and put it together into a package of, I assume, a memo or whatever, can that be sent out to everyone that participated today?
Absolutely, yeah. So
before the meeting, so that if there is some like, oh, I don't remember that, or that didn't quite match up, there's an opportunity to comment.
Sure thing. Yeah, we'll make sure that we share that link to the packet materials with the attendees this evening. All right, and so last thing here, this engagement initiative is a new initiative for us, and so this parking engagement process has been one of our first projects to move through this new community engagement approach. And so we'd love to hear your feedback on how this worked for you all. And so there's this link to a very brief survey. I will drop that in the chat box for you all, and would love to have your feedback on that, just to take 5 minutes and respond to that survey.
We can also include that in the memo too, that that we would share with you all, that Parking Commission would see, so that way you have it a few places, and if you can't get to it tonight, we can make sure you get to it at some point.
All right, and finally, thank you all so much. We really appreciate the time that you have taken to be a part of this process and to have these back and forth conversations. It's really important that we, provide this space and hear from you as we continue to make improvements to how we manage parking across town and in neighborhoods. So really appreciate all of your time and thought in this work.
Thank
so
you.
I will go ahead and share that link in the chat box now, and you can click on that before you drop off the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having this meeting. Much appreciated.
Thanks all. One moment here.
Thanks for all your work.
Where's Mr. Getz? I recognize his voice.
All right, there's that link in the chat box. And appreciate all of your feedback. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.